All right, good evening. My name is Randy Gutenberg, Superintendent for the Waunakee Community School District, and it's my pleasure to welcome everybody to our annual meeting this evening. Our first item up on our agenda is the election of a chairperson to conduct the budget hearing and the annual meeting. So at this point, we would entertain motions and movement to elect a chairperson for this evening's meeting.
Jackie did it so well last year, I nominate you chair of the meeting.
Second.
So we have a motion by Mike and a second by Dave to ask Jack Heineman to chair this evening's meeting. All in favor of Jack chairing the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, the same? With that, Jack, I'll turn it over to you. If I can just add one thing, we did have a community member just momentarily ask us to be able to participate. They asked if they could participate remotely, and we did put them on the speakerphone just to allow for that accommodation. So with that, Jack, I'll turn the meeting over to you as we move forward. And if you follow through on the PowerPoint, it should walk you right through the agenda, Jack.
Okay. Well, I guess our first order of business is notice of the community meeting. The board clerk, Judith Engelfordson, will read the required notice as published in the district's official newspaper.
Okay, my first notice is the notice of the budget hearing. Notice is hereby given to the qualified electors of the Waunakee Community School District that the budget hearing will be held at the District Administrative and Maintenance Center at 905 Bethel Circle, Waunakee, Wisconsin, on the 19th of October 2020 at 7 o'clock. The summary of the budget is printed below, and detailed copies of the budget are available for inspection in the district office at 905 Bethel Circle, Waunakee, Wisconsin, dated this 14th of September 2020. The second notice is for the annual district meeting. This notice is hereby given to qualified electors of the Waunakee Community School District that the annual meeting of said district for the transaction of business will be held at the District Administrative and Maintenance Center at 905 Bethel Circle, Waunakee, Wisconsin, 53597, on the 19th day of October 2020 at 7 o'clock p.m.
Thank you, Judy. The next order of business is budget summary. District Administrator Randy Gutenberg will review the budget and financial data.
Great. Thank you, Jack. I'm actually going to turn that over to Steve Summers. Steve Summers is joining us remotely via Zoom. Steve is our Executive Director of Operations and will be conducting the majority of our presentation this evening with relation to the budget, the levy, and all of the related documents that are in your packet. Turn it over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to walk through the annual meeting slides regarding the budget presentation this evening. Rebecca, what slide are you on?
This is the budget publication required published budget summary format.
Okay, I'm not seeing that on my screen, but I'm going to switch over then. Just look at it from a different view. So you're on the budget summary slide?
Yes.
Yep, hold on.
Okay, thank you. So the information that is referenced in this slide for members of the public is the budget publication that school districts are required to publish in their local paper. For us, that's the Waunakee Tribune. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction presents a format that school districts are required to utilize. So that format is published in the paper along with the notices that were just read by the school district clerk. All of that information was available in the paper as well as off the district website. If you want to go to the next slide, Rebecca, please. The district started our budget planning process back in January of 2020. That process included the identification of budgetary goals. The administration of the district works very closely with the school board's budget committee and then the remaining members of the board as the budget development process is moving forward. The budget goals for the 2020-2021 school year are presented on the next two slides for your information. The first one was focused around presenting a balanced budget. Presenting that balanced budget was focused on aligning our district resources with our strategic planning initiatives, continuing to move the district forward with improvements and enhancements to our educational programs, providing a competitive salary and benefit increase to returning staff, and meeting the needs of our growing student and increasingly diverse population. Another goal that we had was to continue to implement strategies and process improvements to allow us to reallocate budgetary funds to areas of greater priority. And this is an area that we have had success in over the last couple of budget cycles and are proud of the accomplishments that we've made to be able to allocate funds to greater areas of priority. If you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. Goals number 3 and 4. Goal 3 is really related to how we allocate funds from the district to the various school buildings and providing the most equitable allocation of resources that's possible. And goal 4 was really to connect our district's strategic planning initiatives with a long-term resource allocation and funding model that was closely connected to much of the conversation that took place last spring regarding long-term facility planning and resource planning. All of that was originally targeted towards November of 2020 and has been delayed into at least early 21. If you want to move to the next slide, Rebecca. Randy is going to cover the 2 slides on key talking points.
Thank you, Steve. Tonight what I want to touch base on is what's occurring with regards to our planning, strategic planning, and our work and focus as a district this year. What you see on your slide are the mission, the vision, and our aspirations of where we are headed as a district. All of those pieces are very much still in line with the work that we are putting forward. Rebecca, you can go to the next slide. When we start to take a look at our strategic planning initiatives, I think this year, just with all of the changes that we have walked through since from March up until this current time and moving forward, I would say it really falls into 4 specific areas. 1 is the school reopening plans. 2 is looking at our student social and emotional health. 3rd is our continued focus on equity, inclusion, and connections to children. And 4th is obviously why we are here tonight, which is our budget, our finances, and all of those pieces relate together. Starting off with our school reopening, we have started the year with our 4K through 2nd grade in a AM/PM hybrid model that has gone, from my estimation, extremely well. The rest of our grades have remained in a remote instructional model up until this point. The school board has recently approved moving our 3rd and 4th graders into a morning and afternoon hybrid starting on October 26th. Our staff have been preparing for that for the last few weeks, and we feel like we are in a great position to open up additional grades on the 26th of October. Our next time we'll be reviewing some of our data is on November 9th, where our medical advisory committee and the school board will be meeting. At that point, we will be reviewing how our K through 4th grade students have been doing, review our processes as a district, and then evaluate our process timelines and process for moving forward with grades 5 through 12. And I know at the last board meeting, I laid out a timeline or a piece that would at least give you a snapshot of what that timeline may look like. I think all of those pieces will certainly be brought back up as part of our discussion when we review how our 3rd and 4th grade integration went. Our anticipation is that our staff have done a great job, our students have done a good job with the work that they've done, and we anticipate that going well, and that we can reevaluate our plans continuing to move forward. We've also been able to have success with what we've called our enhanced remote model, which is bringing in our special education students who have needs that we are addressing specifically in person. That has continued to move forward in a positive manner. addressing some of the needs of our English language learner families, and just this last week, particularly at our secondary level, looking at how we can bring some of our students in with regards to their lab-based classes. And again, that's been happening successfully. We've also been able to support some of our other programs, some of them athletic, some of them club-based, as far as being able to connect with those kids and give them opportunities to continue to follow some of their passions. I think what we have learned throughout this is that at every iteration, every point of time, we continue to learn and become better at the implementation of these, particularly in the COVID environment. I give great credit to our staff for the wonderful work that they're doing and the support they're giving to our students. With that being said, we also hear very much from our parents who talk to us about the benefits of and the concerns they have with our student mental health. That's absolutely a priority of ours as well. We have a social and emotional learning committee that has been very active to kind of put forth and specifically put focus towards how our students are doing this year. We are doing health-based screeners and mental health screeners, and then following up on those students who we have identified as having the greatest challenges. And those are very direct one-on-one connections with those children and those families. We're also continuing our efforts along the continuance of equity and inclusion. I think that is a very important piece of the work that we started a few years ago and are continuing to emphasize that regardless of our instructional model this year. But I think particularly of importance here is making sure that we have strong connections to our children and to our students. I mean, that's we know that is the way that we can connect and help them learn. And regardless of our instructional model, we are putting forth efforts to continue to make those connections and build those relationships. We also realize that as we kind of in the world that we're living in, there's many challenges that are occurring. Those things are pieces that our children and our students see and live, and trying to do our best to help support them as they're trying to make sense of the things that are around them that we are seeing. And we have equity committees from the community helping to inform some of our work moving forward. Tonight we're coming together to talk about our budget and the financial aspects and the financial work of our school district. All of the things that you're seeing here tonight helps to support all of the work, whether we have students in person or virtual. There are costs and decisions that we've had to make in order to help support those programs. Tonight you'll also hear, and tomorrow night we have a virtual forum where we are going to be talking about the referendum coming up on November 3rd to support some of our COVID expenses. And we're also looking at our planning as it goes in the post-COVID time periods. So this is certainly a short-term vision that we have, but also with long-term goals to continue to provide a quality product with high outcomes at an affordable cost for our community, as we have set forth and done and built a history on in the past. Next week we'll be meeting again to finalize our levy in time for us to do that in the timeliness that we need to per state law, which Steve will be talking about here as we move forward with our presentation this evening. So from the school district's perspective, really 4 focuses. One being the school reopening plans, which is a significant aspect of our work. 2, supporting students in their social emotional learning. 3rd is our continued focus on equity, inclusion, and connections with kids. And then 4th, addressing the business side of our work. I think those are pieces that we have as our focus and have been pieces that have been prominent in our meetings with the board over the last number of months. So with that, Jack, I complete my report, and I will, I believe, continue on with Steve in his report on the state budget and the revenue cap.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. Rebecca, would you mind going to the revenue cap slide? Yep. Before I address this slide, I just want to share some information with the general public who would be viewing this either now or at a later point. I want to talk just a minute about the timing of some of the information that you're going to see on the slides and why we have the annual meeting on the date that we do. So the school board is very involved in the budget planning process and approves multiple versions of the budget beginning in the month of May all the way through the month of August. Each of those versions of the budget is available for the public to view on the District Business Services webpage. The fourth draft of the budget that is approved during the month of August is the budget that is brought forward to the public at the annual meeting. That is the budget that is presented and published in the paper. However, the board chooses to have the annual meeting during the third Monday in October so that we can also share with you the actual information that has become available in the last month. So tonight I'm going to be speaking about both our budget planning process, as well as I'm going to be speaking about the actual numbers and how things have turned out in the last month or so. So you will get a picture of both our planning process and what the actual information is and what we will be taking to the school board next Monday night for consideration. The next couple of slides really review the resources that are available to school districts through the 2019-2021 state budget. The major increase in resources available for schools in the 2020-2021 budget is a $179 per student increase in the state revenue cap formula. In our budget planning process, we were estimating increased revenues in Fund 10 at approximately $1.6 million for the 2020-2021 budget planning process. If you want to go to the next slide, Rebecca. What you see on the next slide is information regarding our past history with the revenue cap formula, as well as what we were originally estimating for the 2020-2021 school year. Keep in mind that number of our original estimate of a $1.1 million increase. A little bit later, I'll reference the fact that that estimate was high because of the fact that our student count was lower than anticipated. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Rebecca. The state of Wisconsin provides aid to schools through several mechanisms. The main mechanism is the state general equalization aid formula. The state did invest an additional almost $250 million into that system for the 2020-2021 school year. We did receive an estimate from the Department of Public Instruction in July that estimated a $58,000 increase in state general aid. In the end, we actually are receiving a decrease in state equalization aid from the information that came out last week, which I'll share in a future slide. If you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. A second significant increase in resources coming from the state in the 2020-21 school year is state special education aid. For the first time in a very long time, the state budget increased resources into special education aid. Our budget planning process included an estimate of $452,000 in additional funds in special education aid. It's important to keep in mind that under the school finance system, changes in the state special education aid in Fund 27, which is our special education fund, are then directly connected to the general education fund, which pays for the difference between revenues and expenses in our Fund 27. So in effect, if the state invests additional resources into special education, the district's general Fund 10 has the ability to keep more funds in the Fund 10 and does not have to transfer as much funds to special education. If you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. Local property taxes. There's a couple of points that are always important to keep in mind when it comes to school district property taxes. The first one is that there is a significant investment at the state level into what is called school levy tax credits. You can see the amount of funding on the slide, but it is something that local school boards are not made aware of at the time that they are certifying tax levies. So school districts' tax levies are certified without knowing the final net tax rate, which takes into account the state's investment in the school levy tax credit. It's important to note that property wealthy and high spending districts do receive more funding through the tax credit system than through the general equalization aid system. And in the last decade, there's been more of a movement towards increasing the funding in the school levy credit portion of the state's investment in public schools compared to the state general equalization aid. Now, that wasn't the case in the 1921 state budget cycle, but it has been a recent trend in the last decade. If you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. So the budget planning process, when we start out during the month of January, we take a long and very close look at district enrollment. We study the enrollment trends from the past to try to make projections moving forward. That's very important for a number of reasons. One is for proper staffing, so that we make sure that we have the right student-teacher ratios in all of our programs. And secondarily, for our budget planning process. The state places a significant emphasis in most of the funding formulas on a student count that occurs in September. So our fiscal year started in July, and one of the most important numbers in our financial system was not available until the month of September, which was our student count. So estimating that is a very critical piece of what we do during the budget planning process. We estimated an enrollment increase of 51 students. Our district typically sees enrollment increases. In fact, it's very rare to not see an enrollment increase of 50 to 100 students or more on an annual basis. The student count that took place on September 18th, though, was 4,306 students, compared to our planning process of estimated enrollment of 4,427 students, which can be compared to last September of 4,376 students. So our district saw a decrease in actual students in the district attending either resident students or open enrollment in students who are attending in our district. So that's a pretty big swing for the budget planning process to go from a projected increase to an actual decrease in our district. And we'll talk about the impact of that in a few slides. For members of the public who are interested in seeing the actual student count data, you're welcome to visit the business services page. We have enrollment information going back many years that's available for your review. Rebecca, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So the next slide really shows you some of that history of our enrollment in more of a graphical form, but you can see in our recent history, the only other year where we had a drop in enrollment was back between 2013-14 and 2014-15. That was a decline of 5 students, and that was the first time that had happened in many years prior to that date. So the decline in enrollment that we have seen for the 2020-2021 school year is very unusual in the history of the recent history of the Waunakee School District. However, in the area school districts and across the state of Wisconsin, this is a very common situation for districts for their counts this September. So districts that have historically had increasing enrollments have seen the exact same thing that we have seen in our student count this fall. There have been families who have made different choices this fall, whether it was private school, homeschooled,
or other options. And so enrollment declines occurred in our community, in our district, as well as the majority of the neighboring districts around us. So this is something we're seeing, throughout the state of Wisconsin. Rebecca, if you can go to the next slide. One of the pieces of data that we like to track on an annual basis is comparing the building capacity of each of our schools to the enrollment. The capacity is identified in gray. The enrollment from this September is identified in blue. So you can see on a building by building basis where we are at currently with our September enrollment count compared to the capacity of the school. If you can go to the next slide, Rebecca. Overall, across all school buildings, the maximum capacity has been calculated as little over 4,700 students. Our student count this September leaves us about 400 students short of that maximum capacity across the district as far as total enrollment. On the next slide, we share information about our expenditure planning process. A couple of key pieces to share. We have an approximately 12.0 increased staff in our budget planning process. And another major source of expenditures are salary and wage increases. At this point, that process is going to take place a little bit later than it has in recent years, likely the December board meeting, as we need to make sure that we have all the information available regarding resources available for the school districts. No decisions have been made as to salary or wages as of this moment in time. The district budget does have a small contingency fund of $100,000, which does remain available and is unspent at this time. The next slide shows some history as to the district's general fund expenditures going back to 2013-14. And again, if you're interested in more detailed information, that is all available on the District Business Services webpage, going back as many years as you would like to see. The next slide presents information on a cost per student basis. This information is derived from taking our district's general fund, which is our main educational fund, and dividing it by our enrollment. Our estimated cost per student in 2020-2021 is a little over $11,500. You will see in a future slide how that compares to peer districts in Dane County. On the revenue side, the main increase in Fund 10 is the local property tax increase. That is called for under the state's revenue cap formula when the state aid dollar amount is a decline or a low increase. The state aid is made up by a difference in the local property tax levy. The next slide shows information regarding the state support versus the property tax support going back a number of years. The one thing that you will see in general is when you combine the state aid and the per pupil aid, which is another funding mechanism that is increased in support from the state in the last decade, there has been general consistency with the percentage of our budget coming from state resources and coming from the local property tax levy. We have been between 45 and 48% very consistently as a percentage of the local property tax levy compared to the state payments. And so you can see that the system has been fairly stable in investment over the most recent years between local property taxes and state support for schools. The next slide shares information about the total property tax levy. So what you see on this slide includes the property tax levy from all district funds, including debt service funds and community service funds. The proposed property tax levy for 2020-21 was $34,691,000. I'll talk about in a minute how that has to be reduced slightly because of the student count that took place in September. The tax levy is something that is allowed by law for the school board to change prior to November 1st. We have our meeting scheduled for Monday, October 26th, for the school board to act on this final tax levy information. As I mentioned, the tax levy is divided between the general fund, the debt service fund, as well as the community service and capital projects fund. If you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. I'm going to share just a high-level overview about the referendum that is being presented to the public on November 3rd. If you are interested in more information about this referendum, we do have information available on the district webpage. We also do have a public listening session webinar planned for tomorrow. We would welcome any members of the public who are interested in a deeper discussion on the November 3rd referendum to please join us tomorrow. We're going to be answering any questions that members of the public have or information that you would like to discuss regarding this referendum. On this slide, you see the actual question that is being presented to the public for consideration on November 3rd. The next slide discusses the rationale for putting a referendum out for consideration for the public, and that rationale is the COVID-19 expenses, the reopening expenses for the 2020-2021 school year, unanticipated state budget adjustments, and then immediate school and building needs as identified by the school board. We do have specific examples of those type of expenditures. We will be reviewing those more specifically tomorrow evening, and be happy to answer any questions that the public has. If you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. The next slide talks about the fact that what we are proposing in the November 3rd referendum is reallocating property tax levy funds from Fund 39, which is the district's debt service fund, to Fund 10, which is the district's general fund. A school board does not have the ability to reallocate funds from Fund 39, which is a fund that is not included in the state's revenue limit formula, to Fund 10, which is a fund that is included in the state's revenue limit formula. The only way a school board would be able to spend additional funds in Fund 10 is to ask the public. That's why this question is being posed. This is not an action that the Board of Education would be able to take by themselves. So therefore, the board has posed this referendum question to the general public, requesting permission to move the $2.1 million in funds from the debt service fund to Fund 10, the general educational fund. And again, if you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. Again, we welcome you to our discussion tomorrow evening for a more detailed look at the November 3rd referendum. Another key component of the school financial system is what's called equalized value. What that basically means is the property value that exists in your community that is paying in for the school district taxes. So the property equalized value for the 2020-2021 school year was estimated at $3.2 billion, a slight increase from the 1920 school year. The equalized value, therefore, then has a direct connection to the tax rate. The tax rate is simply a function of dividing the property tax levy with the equalized property value in the district. We were estimating a property tax rate of $10.94. I will again update that in a future slide. I do want to point out that the school board has a goal of tax rate consistency, which we will talk about in our presentation tomorrow evening. But you can see in the 18-19 year and the 19-20 year, the tax rate remained the same at $10.86 per $1,000 of equalized value. The final tax rate for 2020-2021 is actually $10.89 per $1,000 of value, which again is that goal being presented by the board for tax rate consistency. The reason why the school board has that goal is so that the general public is able to plan for their family budget and understand as close as possible what that school district tax rate is going to look like. And that's it's something that has been a goal in recent years. If I can go to the next slide, Rebecca. The property tax levy was estimated based on a 2.5% increase in equalized value. The actual increase in equalized value that came on October 1st was 2.8%. So we had a 2.8% increase in property value throughout our community that we learned about earlier this month. If you could go to the next slide, Rebecca. One of the most challenging pieces of trying to explain a school district's property tax levy is the fact that a school district levies across multiple municipalities, and those municipalities can have assessment value changes that do not occur on the same cycle as the other municipalities that are in a school district. So therefore, as we go from year to year, we do see percentages change from one municipality to the other as far as the percentage of the school district tax levy that is allocated towards that municipality. And we are seeing the same thing occurring again this year. So it is important to keep in mind that even though the school board is looking at a equalized tax rate being consistent from one year to the next, changes do occur within municipalities as property tax shifts take place from one year to the other. Rebecca, if you could go to the next slide. There is a term in Wisconsin school finance referred to as fund balance. It's important to keep in mind that a fund balance is not a bank account. The district does not have $6.4 million sitting in a bank account like an individual or a business might have in a savings account or an investment account. A fund balance is really an accounting term that basically takes the district's assets, subtracts the district's liabilities, and comes up with a net equity or fund balance for a district. You can see that in our case, that fund balance has changed from 7.4 million in 2013-14 to 6.4 million in 19-20. We're at about 12.1% of the next year's budget, which is a low point in recent years. The board has had long-term goals when it comes to fund balance, and we have been implementing those goals over the last couple of years. The next slide, please, Rebecca. So next Monday, it's going to be important to understand that the school board will be meeting to evaluate the changes to the school financial system that have occurred since the board approved the fourth draft of the budget in August. This slide covers some of the information as well as the next slide about what has changed. So the September enrollment count has changed. That decreases the amount of funds available to the school district under the revenue limit formula. In addition, there are budget changes that have taken place. As one example, the number of open enrollment out students has increased since last fall. The district needs to budget approximately $7,000 per student for those students who opt for open enrollment out. So there are a number of budget changes that need to be accounted for as well. We have to consider the final district property value, which is $3.18 billion compared to the estimate. We have to look at the final district revenue cap amount, which is $45.5 million compared to our estimate of about $45.8 million. So the impact of the decline in the student count was approximately a little over $300,000. Some additional next steps is the school board has to approve an updated budget with the state aid amount that was certified on October 15th. So just last week, the state shared information with school districts on that final state aid amount. In our district's case, that state aid amount actually declined from the estimate that was provided in July and declined from the amount that we received in the prior year. The final district tax rate will decline from $10.94 to $10.89 because of the fact that the revenue limit formula has decreased from the amount that we were estimating. And then the estimated tax increase on a $360,000 home is $10 compared to our budget estimate of $28. All of those changes will need to be completed by November 1st. One important point, just to make the public aware, the school board will need to approve 2 different tax levies next Monday night. One of the tax levies will assume the status quo budget, or the budget that we have been working with. The second tax levy that the school board will approve will be a tax levy if the referendum on November 3rd is approved by the public. After November 3rd, the school board clerk will then certify whichever tax levy is the correct one based on the results of the referendum on November 3rd. The last time that we did this exact approach was in 2014, when the school district had a referendum in November, and the school board did the exact same thing. Next slide, Rebecca. One of the important things for the public to always be aware of is the significant amount of oversight into a school district's finances. In our district's case, it's important to note that we have a very active school board treasurer. We do have our school board treasurer reviewing all of our larger bills on a monthly basis. That is not something that takes place in many school districts, but we do have an active participating school board treasurer in Waunakee. We do have a budget committee. That budget committee is very active in the budget development process and is very key towards providing input into the budget planning process. All 7 school board members participate in our budget planning process at the monthly board meetings. We do report all of our financial information to the Department of Public Instruction. The school board does hire an external auditor independently who comes in and reviews all of the school district's finances. That independent auditor's report is presented to the school board, typically during the month of December, and it is posted on the school district website for anyone to review. We also have external private businesses like Moody's and Standard & Poor's that evaluate the district's financial information. And as always, any citizen who wishes to seek any financial information from the district is welcome to do so, whether it's through our district's website or a public records request. We're always happy to provide any information requested by members of the public. On the next slide, we are sharing information with you as an example of one of the most recent reviews from one of the outside businesses that is evaluating the district's finances. So you see a little snapshot on this slide from the Moody's Investor Service rating of the district back in May. That full rating is available for the public to review on the District Business Services webpage. We do like to share information with the public regarding where our district sits, excuse me, within the broader Dane County set of districts. What you see on this slide is the property tax rate for the 2019-20 school year. So on the far right, you see the Mount Horeb School District, which has the lowest tax rate in Dane County. On the far left, you would see Monona Grove, which has the highest tax rate. Our tax rate last year of $10.86 was basically right in the middle. An average tax rate for all of Dane County is where our school district was at in the 2019-20 school year. And with a tax rate of $10.89 for the 2020-2021 school year, our district will remain right in the middle, right at the average of the tax rates that you see in the surrounding Dane County communities. On the expenditure side, if you could go to the next slide, Rebecca, please. One thing that's important to note about our school district is we have historically been a low spending school district on a cost per student basis. This has not changed for many, many years. We have always been in the bottom third of the county for expenditures per student. What you see for information on this slide is the line that goes down the right side of this information is the average. The average in Dane County in 2018-19 was $14,448. You can see the Madison Metropolitan School District was the highest spending district in Dane County at a little over $17,000 per student. The McFarland School District was at about $11,569. And where you see Waunakee was at $13,243. So historically, the Waunakee School District has been a below average and typically in the bottom third of expenditures per student in the Dane County region. And at this point, I would be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone in attendance would have this evening regarding any of the information that was presented in the previous slides or any other information in general that you might have regarding the district budget process. I would be more than happy to answer that for anyone in attendance at the meeting. And so I'll turn it back over to you, Jack, to coordinate any questions that anyone might have or to move on to the next portion of the agenda.
Steve, thank you for the great report and detailed report. Are there any questions?
Tim Kiefer would like to make a comment.
Tim?
I'll turn it back over to you, Jack.
Tim, we're hearing your...
Hello, can someone hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Okay, can people hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I feel like this is the phrase for 2020. Can you hear me as we move over to remote meetings and Zoom? My name is Tim Kiefer. I live in the village of Waunakee, and I would like to briefly testify as to the budget. I have three very brief points I would want to make. My first point is to congratulate Thomas Hughes, who is a National Merit semifinalist in Waunakee. Every year when I testify to the budget, I always try to recognize the people who are winning the National Merit semifinalist, and this year we did have one person who was Thomas Hughes, and I think it's important that he be recognized for that achievement, something that less than 1% of all high school graduates achieve. The second point is I would like to thank the school teachers, parents, and students during this unprecedented, difficult time that we've never experienced before in our lifetimes with the COVID pandemic. I think everyone's doing the best that we can. I understand there's been lots of controversies about lots of things in the last several months, but I think it's important just to take a moment to recognize that we're all doing the best we can. And the third and final point I would like to make tonight regarding this budget, the budget process, is to say thank you to the school board members. I am myself an elected official. I represent the village of Waunakee and part of the town of Westport on the county board. And for anyone who asks me about that and says that I have a thankless job, I always try to mention that I think school board members actually have the hardest job in elected local government, because when things go bad or people think things are going bad with the schools, people are very, very quick to criticize school board members. It affects people's kids, so people's feelings and emotions tend to be running high, and I think it's a really difficult job, much more difficult than county board. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the school board members for what you do. I imagine you probably don't get a lot of thanks, but at least you get a thank you from me for whatever that's worth. And with having said that, I really think the Waunakee School District is one of the top, if not the top, school districts in Dane County, if not the entire state of Wisconsin. I think you're all doing a really great job, and I am in support of the budget that's being proposed tonight. So that's my testimony. Thank you.
Tim, thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments regarding the budget? Hearing none, we'll do we have to review the minutes?
Yes.
And approve the minutes of last year's?
Yes.
So if you've had a chance to review the minutes from last year's meeting, I'd like a motion to approve, or if there's any comments regarding them.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Here, any against? The minutes have been approved. So now the treasurer's report, and I'd just like to make a few comments. As Steve stated, we're down about 80 students this year. It's going to affect future budgets, as we do the budget planning. And a few observations as well that I'd like to share. If you look at the budget documents, the decrease in Fund 10 balance was planned by the school board, and this spent down the remaining 2014 operational referendum funds, while subsequently increasing the fund balance of capital projects in Fund 40. The increase in Fund 20 balance was due to the elimination of Fund 60 student activity accounts, which were all moved to Fund 20. The food service fund ended with a balance of 0, and this was due to the fact that the school board approved continuing payments to Taher during the school closure. And we also provided free meals to those in need. And that was a very successful program in the community. But it did take down our funds in the food service budget. And as we move forward, there's a lot of expenditures, and they'll be talking about these tomorrow regarding the referendum. But just to highlight some of the expenditures that we've made due to COVID and reopening. We've got staff and technology. We've increased our funding there by $466,000. And we needed additional staff needs, paras and so forth, to support the education. That expenditure increased by $120,000. And we've been doing a lot of work to clean and sanitize our buildings. And just the cleaning and sanitizing equipment and supplies to open up the school year came out to about $112,000. And personal protective gear, which we normally don't spend, was $32,000. And we did do a capital maintenance project, which is a improved air filtration system. If you remember, the filtration system kills 99% of virus, bacteria, mold, and so forth in our buildings. And even though we spent it for COVID, I think it's going to really be positive for our buildings going forward, creating a better environment for staff as well as students. We've also increased our school nurse by 0.5% just so that we can, do the contact tracing and really move forward with our school opening plans at a cost of about $55,000. We did approve a contact tracer LTE at $17,000. That could go up. And to date, we've spent about $1.4 million just on preparing and moving forward for the opening of our schools. And that's not counting transportation and the school meals and so forth as we move forward as well. So I just wanted to share that with the community. We've done a lot, spent a lot to help create a better environment and a safer environment for both staff and our students. So with that, that concludes my report. And now we've got to take action to accept the report.
Yes.
Do I hear a motion to?
So moved to accept the report of the treasurer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? The report is moved forward. So now we need motions and seconds. And as we go through these resolutions, whoever makes the motion and the second, please state your name for the minutes of the meeting. So we go with student fees, and we'll have them read these motions, right, these resolutions?
Yes.
So whoever makes the motion, please read the resolution as written in the document.
For Daily, I'll make a motion, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Waunakee Community School District, Dane County, State of Wisconsin is hereby directed to charge student fees and at such cost as shall be set by said board.
Can we have a
second. Dean Kaminsky, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. Board salaries? Is there somebody that makes that motion?
Tim Shell.
Be it resolved that the board members of the Waunakee Community School District be paid a salary as stipulated below and be reimbursed for expenses incurred on district business when traveling outside the district. My motion carries over what's currently in our packet, $3,200 per year for the officers and $2,800 per year for non-officer members.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Deanne Lensert.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution passes. School offers a school lunch board program, and the board needs authorization to conduct a food service program. Can I have a motion?
Michelle, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Waunakee Community School District is hereby directed to furnish school lunches to any and all students of this district at such places and times and at such costs as shall be set by said school board as laid out in our packet.
Kurt Healy will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution passes. Legal counsel, periodically it's necessary for the board to seek legal advice and counsel. Your approval as a community is necessary. Do I have a motion?
Dan Carter. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Waunakee Community School District is authorized to engage legal counsel to represent the district and provide legal advice to the district.
Do I have a second?
Gene Kaminsky, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
God, everybody's sleeping at it. Those opposed? The resolution passes. Annual meeting date. We set the date and hour of the next meeting, or give the board the authority to do so.
Kurt Healy makes a motion to resolve that the Board of Education of the Waunakee Community School District be authorized to set the date and hour for the 2021 annual meeting within the guidelines established by Wisconsin statutes.
Michelle, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution passes. The board needs your approval to contract for bus service and/or operate its own buses. Can I have a resolution?
Gene Kaminsky. Be resolved the Board of Education of Waunakee Community School District, Dane County, State of Wisconsin be authorized to purchase, operate, and maintain transportation vehicles, as well as contract for transportation services to provide transportation to students, including but not limited to students whose residence is located within 2 miles of the school the student attends as per board policy.
Second?
Dan Carter, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. The tax levy, the board recommends a total tax levy of $34,691,625, of which $24,210,291 is for general funds, $9,521,947 is for debt service, 0 for non-referendum debt service, $509,296 is for capital expansion funds, and $450,091 is for community service.
Mr. Chairperson, Chris Hessel, I move that there be levied a school tax assessed against a taxable property within the Waunakee Community School District in the sum of $34,691,625 necessary to operate and maintain the district school system and to finance the recommended budget for the 2020-2021 school year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution passes. Please feel free to ask for information or answers to board members or administration. So if you need any more information, please ask administration or your friendly board members for questions or answers to your challenges or happiness. With that, thank you for coming tonight. We need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Kurt Neely, motion to adjourn.
Dan Carter, second.
All in favor?
Aye. So moved.
So moved.
Very good. The budget committee will commence, let's just say 5 minutes at 8:15. Budget committee members and Steve will stay on the Zoom meeting as the